Roki Sasaki is coming to Major League Baseball, but will he be coming to the Dodgers? Who knows? We also know Clayton McCullough will be leaving the Dodgers to head to the Marlins in a bigger role. And we're going to talk some more with a little bit of hindsight now. Freddie Freeman, Kirk Gibson, the parallels, the comparisons, all that. Let's get live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, a podcast about your World Series champion, Locked On Dodgers. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Sunday evening. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. So please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Jumping right in, Vince, we got big news over the weekend, stuff we had talked about last week. It's a lot closer to reality now. Roki Sasaki, it was announced by his NPB team in Japan that they will be posting him. So he will be coming to Major League Baseball. The question is where. And, as soon as the news broke, everybody was quick to point out it's not a guarantee he's going to the Dodgers. And I agree it's not a guarantee. But I still I think about all of the logical places he could land. And really, there's one that is much, 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 much more logical than all the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, the first question for me is the when. There is a slight difference if he does it right now in the next week, and if it becomes after that, because there is a slight difference in money, not enough to make a world of a difference, but there would be more teams that have more money if he's posted in January rather than now. So that's kind of my first question. But yeah, I mean, everyone's saying Dodgers, everyone's saying Padres as well. Padres have Yu Darvish, who I guess is kind of a mentor to him and one of his favorite pitchers growing up. It's AJ Preller speaks Japanese apparently, so that could help out. The Padres are still a team that would be in contention. So yeah, it would appear to come down to those teams, but I'm sure back when Shohei Ohtani was about to sign, when he did a similar thing to Roki Sasaki is going to do. And I don't think anyone had the Angels in mind, even though you probably could have guessed it was going to be an American League team. I don't think that was the American League team most people had in mind. So while it seems logical and it makes the most sense, it also comes from, being a Dodger fan and maybe having a little bit of, I always say I don't read into reports about players from overseas too much because we don't really know, especially when they're coming from the major reporters in baseball. So, yeah, I don't know. They were right about Yamamoto, I guess, so it could be right.
Yeah, and, I guess one of the things you mentioned, the interesting thing will be the timing on when he gets posted. If he gets posted before December 2nd, then it will for sure be on the 2024 international signing period, which would mean the Dodgers have the most money to offer him. If he's posted after December 2nd, he will have the choice. He'll have the option. It could be either signing period. And so if he wants to wait for more money when, even the Dodgers, if say he's decided he wants to be on the Dodgers, but they could offer him more in the next signing period, that would be an option if he's posted after December 2nd. There is no real set. How long does it take between when a team decides to post a player and when they actually post him? There is no set time on that. It could, if they were motivated, it could happen tomorrow. It's just, we don't really know all of the machinations that have gone on behind the scenes on this, because it doesn't make sense for them to be posting him at all. Unless there was, most likely it was probably when he was drafted out of high school. He probably said, I'm going to sign with you, but only if you agree to post me to Major League Baseball after, at whatever point, they made some agreement then that they're now living up to. That would be my best guess, but we don't really know. And so we don't know if he has, clearly he had more leverage than people might have thought since he's getting posted at all. But does he have leverage to dictate the timing? We don't really know that. It would make sense if he does for him to wait until after December 2nd so that he does have the option, leave all his options open. But that's what we'll just have to wait and see. I see a couple comments, and I've heard this a lot, people talking about concerns about his durability and all those things. And I think it's important to reiterate what we talked about last week, Vince, which is that this is a zero risk signing. Whoever signs Roki Sasaki is doing it at zero risk. It will be a minor league contract. They could put him in AAA if they need to. Like, he will be just like any other international free agent that a team signs, where he has the option for them to put him on the big league roster in 2025. And unless something really went wrong, that is what would happen. But there's no risk. The money is league minimum for the first 2 years. And then, building up through arbitration. And so very, very affordable. This would not preclude the Dodgers from doing anything. It doesn't even take a 40-man roster spot until they decide to put him in the big leagues. And so, when we talk about, well, they should get Corbin Burns instead of Roki Sasaki, there is no instead of. They could do Roki Sasaki. Whoever signs Roki Sasaki, it doesn't have to affect the rest of their offseason at all, because it's zero money, zero risk, zero anything.
Yeah, he'll make whatever the league minimum is, 800,000 or that, if he's on the major league roster, like that's what he's going to make in 2020, at least the next 2 seasons for sure. So it's not a big risk at all. My favorite part of it all, other than we're going to start getting a lot of reports of people that claim to have sources, and I really don't think a lot of them do have source. Like, the Japanese players, one, the Japanese players are probably in Japan for the most part, and two, like, most of these guys they don't play things that close to or they play things close to the vest. They're not out there, putting out a bunch. And even Sasaki, who's, a guy that it feels like a lot more people are concerned with him doing this than they were with Ohtani a few years ago. Maybe because, Ohtani had more of he can do both. And it was like, he needed to go to MLB, where Sasaki, they're like, oh, he hasn't earned that right yet and everything else. That on top of like, fans of other teams that just assume that he's going to go to the Dodgers, or that he's going to go to the Dodgers. And, seeing social media is kind of funny. Like, it's one of those things where we talked about this exact thing last offseason when the Dodgers got Ohtani and Yamamoto, and they're ruining baseball. This is not, whatever, blah, blah, blah. How are they allowed to do this? Whatever. And then also, but they're going to lose in the first round. Like, you can't have both. Now the Dodgers did both on the other side of things, and it's kind of funny to see it all play out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I go back to what I said about the Dodgers making the most sense, like Ohtani and Yamamoto, you could definitely picture if Sasaki were to choose the Dodgers within a week, some Japanese company saying, hey, let's do a sponsorship with all three of you guys. Let's do an ad campaign with all three of you guys here. Sasaki could make more in his first week as a Dodger than he would make from his signing bonus from the Dodgers, probably. And I don't know there's any other team that can offer that. And the fact is, this is different. The Sasaki, it's kind of a, Ohtani is the only parallel, and even he's not a direct parallel, because back then under the posting system, the Angels had to pay $20 million, $30 million, something like that to Ohtani's team. The Sasaki's team is going to get $1 or $2 million. That's it. And, that makes it less of a parallel. But when you look at anything that a player might want, you want a chance to win. How about the reigning World Series champions? You want a team that's really good at getting the best out of their players. How about the Dodgers, who are famously good at that? You want a team where you're comfortable with people. How about this one where they have 2 Japanese superstars and the only Japanese manager in baseball? All these things. Like, it's I know I've got Dodgers colored glasses on, not literally, these are clear. But yeah, Roki Sasaki, you are a Dodger.
Yeah, like I said, it makes sense, but only based on things that Well, one based on the fact that it meant any player, not just Roki Sasaki, like almost any player makes sense to join the Dodgers. So.
Yep, for sure. One person who will be leaving the Dodgers is first base coach Clayton McCullough. He apparently has been hired as the manager of the Marlins. We're going to dig into that a little bit when we come back. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. And I am looking at the NFL odds on FanDuel right now. Let's see, Monday Night Football, who do we got? Looks like the Rams and the Dolphins. Does that sound right? Looks like the Rams are minus 142 favorites. That sounds pretty good. You probably like the Rams anyway if you're a Dodger fan. If so, make a $5 bet on the Rams to win this game. And if they do, boom, you get $150 in bonus bets by winning that first bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks to our everydayers for being with us every weekday morning or every night before every weekday morning. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every day. You can make that easier by subscribing wherever you're watching and listening right now. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Just a few bucks a month. Text directly with us. A lot of fun conversations there, so check that out. Also, for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. You can also check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles over on YouTube, 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. Dodgers first base coach Clayton McCullough, we found out a week or two ago that he was one of the people being considered, maybe a couple different managerial jobs, but we found out on Sunday that the Marlins are hiring Clayton McCullough as their new manager to replace Skip Schumacher. It's kind of interesting all the time to me, Vince, when a first base coach gets hired to be a manager, because I feel like first base coach might be the coach who you have the least information on as a fan. Third base coach, we know what Dino Weeble does. He waves his arm or holds up his hands. We also know he does the infield, works with the infield, does a lot of that stuff. We know what the bench coach does most of the time. Right now with Bob Guerin being the emeritus bench coach and then Danny Lehman being the actual bench coach. A little bit interesting, but at least we have an idea what they're doing. Clayton McCullough, we know he holds a stopwatch and he whispers in base runners' ears and he knocks heads with Shohei Ohtani in a good way, not in a bad way. It's always interesting to me when a first base coach gets hired as a manager, but clearly Clayton McCullough is highly valued because several teams were interested in him and one team chose him to be their new manager.
Yeah, I think in general, there's probably been a profile or two about McCullough in the last few years since he's been Dodgers first base coach. But honestly, I don't know what his voice sounds like. I don't really know anything about him. But he's been interviewed for manager positions the last two off seasons. Now he does get the manager role. I do feel sometimes like, the Marlins, only because it's like Don Mattingly and then Skip Schumacher played for the Dodgers, but he wasn't necessarily, a manager for the Dodgers. So it's like, all right, they're trying to replicate the Dodgers or take something from the Dodgers' success. But yeah, I mean, congrats to Clayton for getting, this is an upgrade from going first base coach to manager. I'm sure, they saw something in him or liked something about him that got him there. And he, like I said, he'd interviewed, he's been finalist for a couple other jobs. He finally gets the job. Like I said, it's one of those where since I don't know much about him and I don't have a strong emotional attachment to him, it's kind of like, okay, cool. Congrats to him.
Yeah. And we do know that he worked with the Dodgers for a long time in their player development system. Apparently Gabe Kapler is now an assistant GM with the Marlins, and he worked with McCullough when they were both with the Dodgers in the player development system, which is definitely part of that. Kapler knows him well, and these people throughout baseball get to know each other. It does seem like it's not an uncommon thing. Like Davey Lopes has been a manager in the big leagues and a first base coach. There's a lot of first base coaches who end up being managers, and I think they do have a lot to do with the running game, which is interesting. An interesting aspect of it. Doesn't mean that teams hire them as a manager to improve their running game, but that's definitely part of what he does. All in all, like it is kind of interesting because I assume if I heard him talk, I'd say, oh, that voice sounds familiar. I probably heard him talk before, but he's about as anonymous as a person can be when they're on our TV screen several times every night. So it is, I'm happy for him. Happy to see, I guess, as a Dodger fan, seeing that other teams, they want people from the Dodgers. And McCullough, the players obviously respect him a lot. There's a lot going on there that he will bring to the job. The question is the job going to be a job that he's going to be happy he took? Because Skip Schumacher was manager of the year, last year? And now he's being replaced as manager. That seems to be the case a lot of times with manager of the year winners. They're usually out of a job within a few years. And the Marlins are not the model organization. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's the big thing is how much time are they going to give them and what kind of plan do they have? Like, would they have the new GM last year who, after Kim-Ing was allowed to walk away after not giving her, an upgrade of a job or promotion. And then, this guy made some decent deals at the deadline, it appears, for some young talent. They have the pitching still. They got Sandy Alcantara back, Yuri Perez back. Like, there's a chance for them to, a couple things go right, and they'll be at least a fun team to watch. But it's one of those, like, what's the plan? Is the plan to let Clayton McCullough grow as a manager as the team grows into, a potential winning team? Or is it just the same thing the Marlins seem to have done? Don Mattingly maybe lasted a little bit longer than I thought, but other than that, like, it's one of those jobs where, I'm a manager now, but you're a manager of the Marlins. So, it like, to me, it always comes down to, like, obviously being a manager, if that's your goal, or if you're a coach, like, that's probably a goal of yours. But it's also like, do you just take any managerial role? But I'm hoping that they have some stability there, and they told him, like, there's a 3-year plan and we don't expect you to win. Like, Bud Black's still with the Rockies for whatever reason. So, and Torey Lovullo was with the D-backs forever. So, if they just let a guy sit there for a while, maybe it might work out.
Yeah, maybe. And, with his history in player development, being a minor league manager, maybe he fits right in on a team that traded all of their major league players last year. And so it will be, a lot of player development stuff. It's not managing a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees where you've got a ton of established superstars. It is very much a molding young players, and that might be a job that he is, if not uniquely suited for, at least pretty well suited for.
Yeah.
Back to Dodger news. We're going to come back in a minute. There was more comments from Miguel Rojas, a few others, about Freddie Freeman's health situation during the postseason, and it got us thinking some more about something I touched on briefly 2 weeks ago after Freddie Freeman's grand slam again with the World Series. The parallels between Freeman and Kirk Gibson seems like they keep growing. We're going to revisit that a little bit. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. I love sports. I love concerts. I love comedy shows. The thing they all have in common is buying tickets. And that means the other thing they have in common is you can find the best price on Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You also have the option of turning on all-in pricing, which will show you the total prices up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And with the Game Time guarantee, you'll always get the lowest price, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to your favorite events with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. We are back. Thanks again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being in every day. Thanks for being with us live here on Sunday night. Remember to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers, and be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles over on YouTube. And Vince, it's been 2 weeks and 2 days now since Freddie Freeman hit a grand slam to end Game 1 of the World Series. Time does fly. Since then, the Dodgers have won 3 more World Series games to become the World Series champions. It was a wonderful time. And that night, because you were at the game, all the hubbub, I did an episode by myself after Freddie Freeman's grand slam, and I talked a little bit about Freeman and Kirk Gibson because there are undeniable parallels. Joe Davis leaned into that with the amazingly wonderful call of the home run, saying she is gone, just like Vince Scully had. And then finding out later, obviously Freddie, we knew about the ankle, and so he's limping around the bases like Kirk Gibson did. Kirk Gibson did the fist pump around second base. Freddie Freeman did the flex at the bullpen between second and third. Since then, though, we found out that Freddie was also playing with fractured cartilage in his ribs that, according to Miguel Rojas, required pain-killing shots every 25 minutes. Couldn't really tell for sure if he meant during the game or just in leading up to the game. But either way, just playing in a ton of pain. And, we've talked about the adjustments he had to make and how the pitch at Nestor Cortez was basically the best pitch for him to hit, which normally Freddie Freeman does like to, reach out, poke things to the opposite field and can get jammed a little bit. In this case, because of the adjustments he had to make, it was that inside fastball was the perfect pitch. All those things, I said that the night of that Kirk Gibson's was probably still a little bit greater because that was Gibson's only at bat in the World Series because he was so hurt. He had 2 bad legs, as Joe Garagiola pointed out in that inning. There was just so much. And at the time, Kirk Gibson's had led to a World Series title. We didn't know yet if Freddie Freeman's would. Now, knowing what we know about the ribs, knowing that we do know that it did eventually lead to a title, maybe even knowing that Freddie Freeman would homer in the next 3 games too, maybe that, adds to it. I feel like these things are getting really, really close on memorability scales. It's pretty wild, don't you think?
Yeah. Obviously, Gibson has the 27 years on it, or 20, however long it's been of that. And I think for Gibson's, and which might not diminish Freddie's in the future, but what might kind of change Freddie's the outlook on it in the future is that Gibson's moment was the only moment for the Dodgers in a long time. Like after Kirk Gibson's home run, obviously they won it all, and that was a moment, but nobody really remembers too much of the other games. You remember Game 1 and Kirk Gibson's home run. The Dodgers didn't have another playoff moment until Jose Lima threw the complete game. What was that in 2004? So it was. I think that helps Gibson's for sure. Like I said, Freddie's. They might win 2 more World Series in the next 3-4 years or whatever it is, and that could. Not diminish it, but like I said, just not make it as memorable in the long run. But in the moment, I mean, it's and Gibson's is more visibly he looked like he couldn't run around, he literally could only trot around the bases. And, I think Freddie holding the bat up is a better move than the pump around the bases in terms of lasting memory. But again, it's all great as Dodger fans. I do think ultimately, I think Gibson just has too much behind it at this point. But Freddie's is the lore continues to grow, and I think it's the other parallel is whoever told him if you get to 3-2, he's gonna throw a backdoor slider. And Freddie, I think it was either on Kimmel or he's been on a lot of stuff recently. He was on the New Heights podcast with the Kelsey brothers, which I haven't got to watch fully yet. But he said like he was looking for the fastball in. So it's one of those things where they both were looking for the pitch and got the exact pitch that they wanted, and that's what led to the home run. So yeah, I mean I think the fact of the matter is that Freddie didn't look as compromised, even though we found out he was compromised. It was a little bit different, and yeah, ultimately the Dodgers weren't the underdog in this one, but also they were down 3. They were down 3-2 in the bottom of the ninth or bottom of the 10th. So
yeah, that this one was extra innings, which maybe adds more to it. The couple things that I keep coming back to that maybe continues to put Gibson over the edge. One is that his came off of a Hall of Famer, Dennis Eckersley. This was the best closer in baseball, ended up in the Hall of Fame. Legitimately, they just flashed up on the screen, hadn't allowed a home run in 2 months or whatever. All those things definitely play into it. There's also just the fact that like Freddie's on the first pitch was awesome, but it didn't give us the time to build up the tension. Kirk Gibson's was the 8th pitch of the at-bat. It was a full count. It was he had a little foul ball that trickled down the line. It was almost just a weak ground out to Mark McGwire, barely went foul, and Gibson had to try to run down the bases on that. All those things. There was just more time for the tension of that moment to build up, but there was also less time because by definition, bases loaded is more tense than Mike Davis on first base, and Mike Davis stealing second was a big deal, but that also meant, that's when it became, okay, now all we actually need from Kirk Gibson is a single to tie the game. Freddie came up and a single would have won the game. I just keep coming back to, if Freddie's had been the 8th pitch of the at bat on a full count, I think it would probably be hands down. But I think because of that, the whole at bat, because Vin Scully did such a good job and Joe Garagiola of calling that at bat and everything about it, and giving Vinny the chance to say Sacks waiting on deck, but the game right now is at the plate. A lot of these lines that we remember came during the at bat, and Joe Davis had barely had time to get out, that Freddie Freeman was coming up, and boom, the game's over, which was awesome for me as a fan, and the pillow I was clutching, but didn't quite get the tension of a full count 8 pitch at bat.
Yeah. The 8 pitches, the full count, being down to the last strike. I think that adds to the aura of the Gibson moment. But I think what a lot of people have said, especially around my age and younger, and maybe for you, obviously you remember the Gibson homer, but like, this is our generation's Gibson homer. Like, when I wasn't alive when Craig Gibson hit the home run, and a lot of Dodger fans that we see on social media these days weren't alive when that homer was hit, or they were 1 year old or 2 years old or whatever it was. And this generation is going to be a more fruitful generation for us Dodger fans. So, like I said, I think that's the only thing for me is that kind of what takes from it is that I expect the Dodgers to win at least 2 more in the next 4 or 5 years. And you're going to remember it still as the one that kicked everything off. But we're probably going to have more fun moments. And the Gibson one had, a nice 16-year run as the only moment for Dodger fans.
Yeah, and really even longer than that, if you talk about, World Series moments, that, I remember in 2019, people say, here we are, year number 31 of watching the Kirk Gibson home run. Like it almost became a source of frustration for people that the Dodgers hadn't had that moment. And I was thinking the other day, like, I wonder if in 2055, people are going to be like, I'm so tired of seeing the Freddie Freeman Grand Slam. It's like, no, because there's going to be so many more World Series titles in the next 31 years. Like, it's hard to imagine the Dodgers not winning at least if we're being conservative, 4 or 5 in the next 31 years. Like, and probably, hopefully a lot more than that. But this team is built to win, built to last. And, maybe that goes back to another point that, who was it? Was it Mike in the chat who said that, that because the Dodgers were major underdogs, that, added to that. The Dodgers had no business being in the World Series in 1988, let alone winning it. This year, they were supposed to win it. They were the best team in baseball. And, that doesn't matter as often as it should, but this year it ended up mattering. But yeah, it is still pretty cool, Vince, that your generation now has a Freddie Freeman moment. You wouldn't think by looking at us. I mean, we look about the same age. Our beards are about the same color, right? But yeah, we are different generations. I was almost 14 years old when you were born. And, I was already, like you said, I had already watched the Kirk Gibson home run. I had been through a lot. I had seen 2 World Series titles for the Dodgers before you were born. And you got one in your first, 29 years of life. And so, it was, it's different, but now I feel like finally we're going to be able to relate to each other, Vince. And it's about time after, 9 years of podcasting together, finally we'll have something to talk about.
Yeah. Something to relate, something to talk about. I think, honestly, I don't remember. I know Freddie's talked about a lot about it. But in the clip from the podcast with the Kelsey brothers, talking about running around the bases and everyone says they black out. And, he said as much, like, I blacked out. He said he does it. He's not a guy that usually pimps homers, but he's like, but it was a freaking grand slam in the World Series. And like for him to kind of admit that moment was kind of funny. And yeah, I think everything, like I said, all this stuff that's happening kind of adds up to it. And, and the fact that we get to hear so much more about it, like we get to hear about it from Freddie multiple times about different things. We get to hear about it from the teammates. We got to hear about it from, whoever. And then, we get to rewatch it on demand.
And 8,000 smartphone angles from the crowd. Yeah. Like there was never that much coverage. Like we don't even know where the Kirk Gibson ball ended up, like who got that ball, because just a different world then. So yeah, social media, ruins most things, but it's made this a lot easier to relive.
Yeah. So, the Dodgers tour continues. They were at the Lake. Some of the guys were at the Laker game. There was, guys on different podcasts and different shows over the weekend. Jack Flaherty's technically not a Dodger, but he's not letting it go for now. So
yeah, he never wants to leave.
Yeah.
All right. You got anything else for today, Vince?
No.
All right. We've got another week of shows coming up, and as always, it will be driven by the news. We will, this week, we'll start getting some award announcements, I believe. Silver Sluggers, at least.
All MLB team.
Yeah, so there'll be some of that stuff to talk about, and hopefully, we'll start getting some rumblings on free agents and all that. So we'll be with you either way, every Monday through Friday, or more likely, Sunday through Thursday nights this week. So thank you for being with us. Thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. You can make that easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vincents91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and both of our DMs are open over there. You can email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.